This video I'm going to be comparing the Nutty Professor franchise to the Gremlins franchise. I've seen Gremlins 1 as well as Gremlins 2 A New Batch. I've seen the 1990s Nutty Professor movie with Eddie Murphy, as well as the 1963 movie with Jerry Lewis. I have not seen Nutty Professor 2, which is a sequel to that movie from the 90s. I haven't heard good things about Nutty Professor 2, so it's not one that I'm interested in watching. When it comes to the highest Rotten Tomatoes score for each franchise, in the case of Gremlins, that first movie has the highest score of 86%. When you look at Nutty Professor, the movie from 1963, has the highest score of 82%. Gremlins wins here. Then when you look at lowest score with Gremlins, the sequel, A New Batch, has the lowest score of 71%. With Nutty Professor 2 has the lowest score of only 27%. Gremlins wins again. Then when you look at average score, Nutty Professor has an average of 58. Gremlins has an average of 78. Gremlins wins here. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, with Nutty Professor you have a gap of 55. With Gremlins you only have a gap of 15. So Gremlins wins again. Then when you look at my personal opinion, I'm going to say right away that I actually like Gremlins more than Nutty Professor. One reason is that I've seen all the Gremlins movies. Also, I think both of them are memorable, though certainly for different reasons. I think that first movie holds up pretty well. Sure, you have that one moment where our main female character is talking to lead and telling him all about her dad. And it's like, wow, this gets really dramatic for just a little bit here in the midst of all the chaos and pandemonium happening with the Gremlins. It's like, okay, this feels out of place. It's weird that she just suddenly dumps all this stuff on him and then it never comes back at all. But other than that, though, I think this movie holds up quite well. I like the way it looks. I think the story is engaging. The actors and actresses are giving good performances. Our main character here is someone that I like spending time with. He's pretty relatable. I think the Gremlins are memorable creatures. And for one, Gizmo is easily one of the cutest creatures ever put into a movie. And on top of that, when the Gremlins get more mean and aggressive later on, start to look different, you definitely remember that. Plus, you remember the rules of the Gremlins, which don't actually make any sense, as Gremlins 2 points out, but they're pretty interesting. And I like that Gremlins is one of these entry-level horror films, family horror film, you could say horror comedy, where you have gremlins that become more aggressive as the movie goes on, and so they attack people. There's chaos in the third act with gremlins all over the town, and you have gremlins all in this one bar. There are moments where humans kill gremlins, so you have fluids that see because of that, but it's not a very violent movie. There's not a ton of people that are killed, so it's very different from Saw or Nightmare on Elm Street, which are R-rated slashers that are clearly intended for an adult audience, not for kids, so they're not at all entry-level horror films, whereas Gremlins is. It feels to me like these movies hold up a lot more than something like Critters. When it comes to Gremlins 2, man, this one is a movie I respect because Joe Dante clearly went into it going, hey everyone, let's get nuts. And so you have this movie that's just utterly bonkers, where you have a fruit gremlin, a bat gremlin, a gremlin that can turn to electricity, a lady gremlin, a gremlin that speaks English. And then you have someone that's literally killed because they gave a bad review to the first Gremlins movie. You go, wait, what? Oh, this movie is bonkers. And there's a moment where you have people watching a movie in a theater, and then the movie starts playing, and so someone stands up to be like, hey, let's get the movie going again, which is also very meta. When it comes to Nutty Professor, I like the movie from 1963. I think the quirky, weird performance that Jerry Lewis gives as our main character is very memorable. I like the way it looks. Eddie Murphy is a lot of fun to watch as the other person that our main character turns himself into because he creates this concoction. Eddie Murphy's a lot of fun to watch. I think the story here is really engaging. They have this guy who likes a girl, but he doesn't think she'll accept him for who he really is because he's a weird guy. People tend to make fun of him for that or get annoyed by him. So clearly, because of that, he's insecure. When you look at the version for the 90s, in this case, it's about a guy named Sherman Klump who's rather overweight, and people tend to make fun of him for that. So clearly he's also insecure. There's a girl that he likes, but he doesn't think she'll accept him for who he really is. He doesn't think she could actually like him. So he's like, hey, if I create a concoction and turn myself into a much thinner, more attractive guy, then she'll like me. So he does actually turn himself into this other guy. But then by the time the movie's over, this lady sees Sherman Klump for who he really is and actually accepts him, which is pretty heartwarming. I will say, when you meet Sherman Klump's family, things certainly get juvenile, and that's not something I like as much, where we see that, there's this boy who just farts all the time. But overall, I think that movie works. And so that'll wrap things up for today.